So if you are just joining us, perhaps you're here specifically for baptisms today, or maybe specifically because of this panel. We have been, as Joel said, exploring the topic of emotional health. And as followers of Jesus, we believe that this is an important aspect to who we are, the self-awareness of how we show up in the world, how we are living, how we interact with others. And we know that that's an expansive subject that we cannot simply cover in just a limited series. So we put it out to you as the weeks went by. Perhaps some of the topics that we covered kicked up more questions for you. Or perhaps you thought, oh, I really wish they'd get to this. And so we said, send us your questions. We want to know. And so we brought in some of our best and brightest this morning, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So why don't you each are armed with a mic this morning. And I would love if you could just introduce who you are and kind of your interactions with the topic of emotional health and how that pertains to following Jesus. Kind of what's your angle on the subject. All right, Bella, we'll start with you because your name starts with B. A-B-K-J. Okay, cool.
So I'm Isabella.
I mean not B.
Sorry, B. Bella also works. I have been a part of this community since launch, which has been such a wonderful blessing in our lives. And I am a therapist or clinical counselor, so I work in a couple different areas. My work in my private and group practice is primarily with adults, individual adults, processing trauma, lots of early childhood pieces, lots of different, kind of presenting struggles that they come in with. And when I say trauma, I mean that on like a very broad sense. Sometimes we think of trauma in the what I would call like the big T trauma kind of sense, right? Like big events that happen that anyone would consider traumatic. But there's also what we can think of as small T trauma, which is like the little emotional wounds over time, even in our childhood, how we learn emotions, how we learn in relationships. And so, and then I do some work with kids and parents and families as well. So, yeah.
Kimberly, first of all, before Kim says anything, and she's heard me say this a million times. So Kim is a guest with us today. She drove all the way out from Abbotsford. But Kim and I have a really long history because Kim was an intern at my church when I was in high school. And this is a lesson for that it's not just on parents and youth pastors to be present in young people's lives. Because Kim looked me in the eye. I feel like she's like, oh, you tell this story every time. We need some new stuff to go on. And she said to me,
it's your origin story, though.
It's our origin story. And she said to me, hey, I think you're neat. Would you go for coffee with me sometime? And she picked me up from high school, and I was so nervous because she was so cool. I think you had a cool blue car, too. And she took me for an iced chai latte, and she just, at a very cool place, Evidar's, and shout out to Victoria. And anyway, I just want to say that it's moments like that. I was so nervous because she was so cool. But she just asked me questions about my life, and I felt like the coolest girl in the world that I got to hang out with this intern. So anyway, Kim, now you can introduce yourself now that I'm done introducing you.
Well, at the time, I didn't feel cool at all. So thanks for that. So we've had a great history. I have history with Bella as well, and then got to know, I don't know him at all. So I met Bella through Summit Pacific College. So I work at Summit. I used to be the campus pastor there for 9 years. And then this past year, I've shifted roles a bit. And so I work as the registrar. And I think how I come into this conversation is something that I do on the side is I'm working on a doctorate in spiritual formation. And so as I approach essentially how we live life with and for Jesus, with other people, that means we do that holistically, which also means we then address things like our emotional well-being and our emotional health. And it's a full-on package, and it needs to be a part of the conversation. Yeah.
My name is Jordan. I'm not sure why I'm on this panel. I'm not an expert in the subject, but I am someone who only discovered about 10, 15 years ago that I have emotions and feelings. That kind of correlated when I got married, actually, now that I think about that. So I represent someone who's done a lot of work in the last decade or so in my life, sitting in counselor.
So much work, you guys.
Sitting
like an
in
excavator of emotions.
Yeah, there was a lot of work to do. So sitting in counseling offices and having conversations and processing and just looking more inward to this part of my humanity, which for a large part of my life I was unaware of.
Yeah, so for all of you, you guys can pick and choose who wants to answer this question, but why do we feel like emotional health is an important conversation to be having in regards to spirituality? Why do you feel like those two things are connected? Or maybe you feel like they're not connected, and if that's the case, then I'm sorry that you're up here.
As I said, I think like our transformation that Christ does in our life is complete. Like he's invested in our complete transformation. And so if that's a complete transformation of our whole beings, then that is going to include our emotions. And so to have the conversation about our spirituality without the concept of our emotional well-being is a half heart answer. It's a half conversation. I don't think that we can do it. I think we try sometimes, or we don't address or name the things. As I was thinking about this topic, I think in the past we maybe haven't just named it. They're there, they're present, but we don't name them necessarily. And so I think to name it is a really wonderful, and then to even say like, oh, like God is transforming this aspect of my emotional well-being, or God has given me these emotions. And what a gift to be able to like own, like when we were singing, I am a child of God, like that also includes my emotions. Yeah. Like he's given me these. How wonderful. So I think it is part of the conversation. It has to be.
Yeah, no, I so echo that, because I think there's so many different ways that I could even answer this question, but I think the base of it is like we can't actually separate those. There is no separating it. That if we're doing that, we're actually missing, like you said, we're missing pieces. We're not seeing pieces. And sometimes that can be, a really protective and adaptive way that we've kind of learned to approach life or faith, that when we take kind of like a behavioral approach or a moralistic approach or an intellectualizing approach, they're simple. They're simpler answers, right? And then we don't have to go to like the really painful places, the really like core places. We don't have to look at those things and address those things. And so that can be like a really protective way that we've even just to learn to approach ourselves and God and our faith. And yet we can't separate those things. And so I think even historically in the church and in all of our lives, really, those of us who've been a part of the church for a long time have really missed opportunities to embody and to bridge these things, and also have done a lot of harm in not doing that. Have done a lot of harm in simplifying things, in not, including the discussion of our our traumas, our emotions, our whatever it is that's family systems, whatever it is that's involved in that. And then we really miss out, I think, on what God has designed us for, and how He's designed our, our nervous systems, our bodies, to be holistic beings, that we're not, floating heads with bodies. We're also not, spirits that are just, disembodied. Like we are holistic, and God has created us that way. And I think the more that we can lean into that, the more that we see our goodness, the more that we see his goodness too. Yeah, I could keep going, but I'm sure we'll get to some of those pieces.
Want to say
I
something?
think partly why we wanted to do this series was everything we've just talked about, being holistic beings and our emotions being part of Jesus making us whole. But I also think it's the nature of emotional health, which why this series is important for us to name these things. Because the reality is I could come in on this Sunday, and I could have a broken leg, it could be in a cast, and I could be in crutches, and I could come in, and so many of you would ask, what's going on? Or what happened? Some of you might be so kind even to get me a coffee or assist me. You'd be so attentive to my needs because you could see there's a clear physical challenge. But the reality is we can walk into a space like this and have crippling anxiety, a real depression, and no one knows. And no one's aware of it, and individuals might be unaware why you seem short or passive-aggressive or kind of disconnected. And so I think partly why we wanted to do this series is just to acknowledge that that is just as much as can be painful and challenging for us to process and walk into a room like this. And for some of us to get up and come to a space like this is a huge challenge. And I think we can see like the crutches and the broken leg, and we could see that would be hard for me to get in here, but I think with that piece, we miss it a lot. And so I think it's important for us just to name that reality, and it can be just as painful and challenging, often more than sometimes some physical ailments.
Okay. Now that we've got those bases covered, Kim, I'm going to start you off with we're just diving right into the deep end here. But Kim, how do you have a healthy conversation with the past generation, i.e. perhaps your parents or somebody older than you, revolving around emotions and or trauma? Perhaps their experiences you had in younger years or in some history you have. How would you go about a conversation like that?
So I got this question this week, and I have gone in so many directions thinking about this question. And I think I feel like I'm going to give a disappointing answer, so I'm apologizing for that.
We got Bella, so
Great.
you know if it doesn't.
Great.
We got it.
In part, I think we have to be really, really honest with ourselves about what we think a healthy conversation actually is. Because if I was like on a journey toward emotional health or healing in my own, and that is attached to my parents, for example, I might be ready for a healthy conversation, but they might not be. And so I think that so I feel like this is like a really preamble answer, but part of the healthy conversation is knowing, are we ready? Are both of us ready for that? And so some of that is like testing out the waters, right? Like I know when I have had these experiences with my own family, my boomer parents, I need to like do a flyby a few times, right? Like throw out some teasers. Like I can't go straight in about the situation that needs some addressing or resolving. For me, I have done a lot of work to get to the place of having that conversation. They've not had that work yet. And so sometimes I need to do a flyby a few times to like really work them to get them ready. And then something else that I was thinking about regarding this question is, so I was watching some of the sermons, and so Jordan, when he was talking about family systems and the sermon about like looking back to go forward, and he quoted Pete Scazzaro and says like, Jesus in your heart, but grandpa's in your bones. That's true if we're talking about our families, that's true for them too. Yeah. So the same grandpa, for example, that's in my bones that I need to sort out is in their bones. Or, right, like, and so I need to be mindful and hopefully helpful to like think about, well, what are they coming to the table? Yeah, where are they starting with? Another piece that I was thinking about was, and truthfully, I only got to this place in my life when I was a little bit older. But also, this is a caveat, there's so many variables and circumstances that could come into a question like this. So I'm not going to address like explicit wounding. Like I'm thinking, when I think about this question, I'm thinking maybe accidental wounding or that kind of thing. And so when it's accidental wounding, I think it has been helpful to think they were probably working with the best that they had. And that can be a really hard place to get to. It can be a really gracious place to get to. Part of that is grandpa's in their bones. And so they've had stuff. So there's lots of like setting things up, because our healing doesn't necessarily track with maybe theirs. I also think that we have to be mindful about what our hopes are out of this healthy conversation. Are we wanting them to change? Is that realistic? Is my conversation with them going to change their behavior? Is the action that we want out of that conversation more about me and my action? Is it about setting my boundaries and saying, from this point on, I feel like I'm going to do this, right? Like, there's so many variables to this question. But I think being mindful of what do we want out of this outcome of the healthy conversation. So there are some thoughts.
That's good. That's really good.
And pray about it.
And pray about it. I think the overarching theme
That's
here,
great at the end, just put that in there.
that's important.
Yes.
The overarching theme here is go slow.
Yeah.
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 I know I'm the host, but I will add this because somebody said it to me once. Dealing with different generations and having hard conversations, especially around this emotional topic, is there's a whole different set of language and norms you're working with. And sometimes if you're somebody who's done a lot of work and perhaps you're talking to somebody who's done no work or doesn't have the language, it's almost like going 100 miles an hour on the freeway and being like, get in. So there is an element of like walking with somebody. And
Yeah, I was going to mention, like, do a Google search on their generation and their value systems. Because we come to the conversation probably with like similar values, but expressions of that similar value from different places. And so we might be talking similarly, but having two different conversations because we got different language. And so having even like a quick Google search, like, what do boomers value? Or,
Okay, that's great. Bella, how do you handle your emotions or emotions in general when you're going through like a really visceral time of anxiety or shame or guilt or grief? How do you navigate when you know you're walking with kind of big, heavy emotions?
Yeah, big question. I almost like a lot of like my background and my training is more like experiential type work and emotion focused. And so I almost want to like take each of those like emotions and have like a whole another like answer to that and conversation with that. But I also think that I can't, just like we can't separate this conversation from our faith journey, I can't separate who I am and how I show up as a person and my own emotions and my own experiences from this topic either. Like, I would be doing my clients a disservice, I would be doing my family a disservice. And so, yeah, in my own emotions, I think what I have learned is that all of my own parts will show up. All of my own approaches, all of my own ways of coping and addressing them do show up and will show up. And so I almost want to speak to that like more broadly from the maybe like social scientific perspective, and then speak to my own experience. So what we know about emotions, and part of what we've been talking about and learning in this series, is that emotions are adaptive, especially our core emotions, right? Like they have a action tendency that they're there to move us towards what we need. And so, and we could take each, emotion, like anger is there to protect you, to speak up, to help you have boundaries, to protect yourself and others. Sadness is meant to move you to seek closeness, to seek comfort, to recognize your love if it's grief, right? To recognize what you've lost. And I could go through, every emotion, even like surprise, joy that prepares us. Like all of these things are God-given, adaptive. They have a purpose. And I think what Christine mentioned when she was here was around killing the messenger, right? Like when we learn, oh, my fear is here, but my fear can't be here for whatever reason, right? Maybe a really well-intended parent sees our sadness and they, try and distract us, or they try and cheer us up, or maybe they see our anger and, have their own tolerance for anger, and so their response is more behavioral. You shouldn't be doing that, or you need to be listening, whatever it is, right? We learn, oh, that can't be safe in my body. I can't feel this and be okay. And as kids, as children, as we grow up, like we need, it's our basic survival need to be in connection. That's how God created us, to be connected, because that's where we get our needs met. And so, we then learn to disconnect. We learn, well, those emotions are still showing up, so there must be something wrong with me, and I need strategies to protect myself against feeling those, right? Which is where the more maladaptive or maybe more protective emotions come in that inhibit us from feeling those. So that's like where we see anxiety and shame start to show up. And those aren't meant to stay in our system for a long time. And so they get really tricky. And so we learn defenses. We learn, ways that we move away from that. That can be, our addictions. That can be, it can be minimizing ourselves, or intellectualizing, or bypassing the pain, right? Well, God's got a plan, or and so there's so many different ways that we could stay there. And so what I've learned in my own life and my own emotions is to feel them, to stay with them, to know, and it's not always as simple as that, because we have all these other parts, but what I can offer myself in that is to trust, like, God has designed my body, my nervous system in such a way that I can feel this and be okay, that I'm meant to feel this, that this is meant to connect me to those around. Our neuroreceptors, for every neural message sent from our brain to our body, there's 9 from our body to our brain. Emotions don't actually live in our minds, and we're a very mind-focused culture. Emotions live in our bodies, and so coming back to our bodies, we can actually offer ourselves a really beautiful gift, which is what I learned, that when I move towards the pain, when I can be with my whatever that is, like grief, fear, sadness, anger, when I can be with that pain, I learn that I can feel that and be okay, that I can actually access a safety in myself that's God-given and God-created, that I have access no matter what's going on around here, that my circumstances might not change, that, hard things will happen. And I think that's like one of the promises in Scripture that we don't like to embroider on pillows, right? In this life, there will be troubles. And what we have access to internally is the safety, right? Is the Spirit in us that whatever is going on out here, if I'm always constantly working out here to try and change my circumstances, I'm missing that I can access a sense of safety within myself. And so I think in that, have learned that I can feel it and be rigorously compassionate and kind to myself, and realize that that's God's goodness in me. and that he's with me in that I always have access to that. And yeah, and what a beautiful gift that we have within us, that when we move towards the pain, we actually see the very thing that, we thought would take over, that would consume us, is actually where we can find meaning and goodness and kindness for ourselves, and we can see God's kindness show up in that place, because that's how he designed us. Yeah.
Thanks, Bella. That's really beautiful. Okay, Pastor Jordan. Now that we have done this whole series, we are all emotionally mature, and we will never...
You all get certificates at the end.
Yeah, you all get certificates.
Emotionally mature certificate.
And for an extra donation, you also get a keychain. Anyway, however, knowing that past, present, and future, there is potential that sometimes we can be hurt even in a group setting like this. And so I would just love for you to chat a little bit about how do we respond to those in the church, to those that perhaps we're serving with or in our small group, when we feel a sense of hurt or overlooked or whatever that might look like. How do we address that?
Yeah, and this might be the hardest part, right? It's the idea that the greatest way to live is to be loving. Like, that's the North Star that Jesus gave us. And to be loving means we have to be with other people to be loving. Which means we have to be in communities like this, where inevitably there will be hurt. There will be pain. There will be moments that will create confusion, sadness, all kinds of different things. And so I think as we think about in this context, in this community, I think the first thing is to establish what you're feeling. We've talked a lot about being aware of why am I feeling what I'm feeling, what am I feeling? And then so often we say in this community, it sounds like that's a conversation. I think we have less conversations than we need to have. I think we need to have more conversations with individuals and have conversations in our small groups and different individuals, and everything that Kim said before about the preamble was really good, really helpful for the context of why do I want to have this conversation? What's the outcome I'm hoping for? Is this person ready? Is this something that I just need to work through? Or is this something that I actually need to have a conversation with? In my experience, when these things happen, when there's some confusion, when something happened and it created some offense in somebody else, a lot of times people just get up and find a new community. And what is missed is the opportunity of working with another individual through conflict. What's missed is receiving and offering forgiveness. What's missed is my blind side, like the things that I'm missing. And so I hope that we create a posture that we're approachable and that you can talk to ourselves, but even just individuals in this community, because we'd want to know. I think sometimes we hear of stories of like offense or things have happened, and we never knew. And how could we help, or how could we resolve, or how could we address, or how could we create space for that if we are not aware of it? We're not aware of everything that's going on. We miss lots of things. So I think a healthy community learns the process of doing what Jesus set out for us. When you have offense with someone, you go to them and you have a conversation and talk through it. And there's so much more that we need to put around that conversation. So that could sound really simplistic. So don't everybody after the service go to somebody else that you have offense with. But I'd love, Kim, you got something to say.
I do.
Yeah,
Okay.
fix it, Kim.
No,
Fix it.
I want to just add.
Put something
Okay,
nice
so
around it.
I accidentally offended somebody once that I worked with. I work at the Bible College, so we're talking like Christians working together, and I offended somebody, and I didn't know it. And I'm so grateful that they approached the situation, and the way that they approached it was like this. Kim, I'd love to chat with you about something. Sure. So I swung by their office, and he said, the story that I'm telling myself is, and then he told me the offense from his perspective. Yeah, and I thought, oh, that was never my intention. Actually, why I did that was because of this. And he said, oh, okay. And Honestly, the conversation went so beautifully because he said, the story that I'm telling myself, guys, I've used this before or since. It's so lovely. It's such a gentle way of approaching a hard conversation because it owns a little bit that like I've done some interpreting here and this is my interpretation of what's gone on. You might be spot on, or you might be not. And like that's been a really helpful tool for me.
And how did you feel
when
he said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And he's like, and he told you what? How did you feel?
I felt really honored that the way that he came at it with me, because then I would have hated that there would be this thing between us that I could have addressed, and it could have been an easy like, oh, we are good. But if I found out much later that there was this awkward offense between us, that would have really grieved me. And so because I really value, I think the gospel inherently is about unity. And so being unified to Christ and unifying us together. And so if I wasn't a part of something to unify something or someone to myself, that would really grieve me. And so I felt really honored, and I felt like I could just have the conversation really quick. It was really quick, but we had just addressed it straight on.
Really
but
quick,
lovely.
you address it, you move on, and you feel better about the relationship.
Yeah.
And in my experience, sometimes as Christians, we think that we want to be nice to Kim. I don't want to tell her this. She probably didn't. I just want to be nice. But we think we suppress it. We think we are over it, but often we're not, and it shows up in like passive-aggressive ways and different things like that. I tell the people close in my circles all the time that the most loving thing you can do is to tell me the things that I don't see, and the ways that maybe I hurt you or said something that was unkind that I probably didn't intend to, or maybe I did, and maybe that needs to be addressed. But I say to our team, it's like, you have keys to open doors in my reality that I don't have the keys to. You have those keys. So only you can open these realities for me and be aware of that and help me grow more into the image of Jesus. The people around me have more potential to grow these things in me than I do because they see the things. I don't know what it's like to be on the other side of me. They know what it's like, and sometimes it's not great, and so they need to help me with that. And so I think that's such a beautiful story, and I would imagine your relationship got a little bit closer because of that. Like when you go through these things with people and you have these moments and it's stressed and it's done all in the right way, it actually bonds you together and you feel like we're able to share vulnerable things, and it almost gives you a sense of confidence in that relationship, knowing that if I say something again, they will let me know, and vice versa, that we feel confident enough in this relationship. And I think that's so good. I could go on, and I'm not.
I was going to say, kind of, you just about said it there, but like now you probably have an even greater level of comfort if something happened to you that you feel like, oh, there's an openness here that I could share. Okay, just being conscious of time, I have one question left. I was actually going to combine two into one. Okay, I would love to hear from whoever wants to speak on this, but can I be spiritually mature and still struggle with anxiety, shame, emotional triggers? It's a yes or no. Just kidding.
Yes.
And we're done.
That's the question.
Yeah. You go. I've talked too much.
I was just going to say, are you human? Yeah, we live in this, in this world where we do inevitably have woundings. And so that's a part of our journey. And yeah, I mean, I could say more.
I think
Bella says the answer is yes, you can be spiritually mature.
But like, think about, okay, so Jesus, right? Like perfectly spiritually mature, tempted multiple times. And then I was thinking about this question. I was thinking about when Jesus went into the temple and was like flipping tables and then like pulled out a whip.
We don't talk about that Jesus very often.
We don't talk about that Jesus very often.
Come back
Was
next
that anger,
Sunday.
Bella? Was that anger?
Like that, I don't want to say Jesus was triggered, but we would show, like, we might talk about that as like a response, an emotional response. And so if Jesus had emotional responses, and he's Jesus, I think that we can know that we're going to have emotional responses. Again, we've been created in his image and in his likeness. And so if Jesus is having emotional responses, both like the big ones, and like, let's talk about him grieving at Lazarus's tomb, right? Like he's shown us a variety of emotions. So if Jesus is expressing these emotions, then so will we. I don't think that expression of emotion relates to our maturity. I do think that where maturity comes in is like when we are triggered to say, what's this saying? Like, where's this anxiety? What's this telling me? What is the deep longing within me that is being like poked here? What bruise is being touched here that I need to pay attention? I think that's where maturity comes in. What's happening under the surface? Because obviously something's happened on the top. What's going on underneath?
And if I could add on to that too, I think when we see Jesus and his emotions, when we see him and his natural, responses, there's something that I think we miss with emotion. We think that regulation means calm. We think that regulation means neutral or lack of emotion. It doesn't mean that. It means, can I be with myself? Can I stay connected to myself and God and others? Whatever is showing up, can all parts of me be welcome? And so if anger is showing up in me, can I be with that? Can I hold that and make space for it? I don't actually have to solve my own emotions. I don't actually have to solve anyone else's emotions, because God has designed my body in such a way that it knows how to process those. If I feel that and I feel safe in that emotion, that I can feel that. And by the way, the safety is like through relationships. So beautiful that as Christians we have access to the only ultimately most secure attachment figure. That's the only one that can be perfect and he's the only one that doesn't actually need to repair ruptures, right? We have access to his presence all the time to bring that sense of safety. And the emotion, the actual time it takes for an emotion to move through your body, to move through your nervous system, is 90 seconds at most. When we feel that, when we actually ride the full wave, a lot of us have learned to come up here and then to cut that off, but to actually ride that to its full completion, 90 seconds, and that's how God has designed us. So we don't actually need to solve each other's emotions. We need to sit with it. We need to listen. We need to be with. And it will naturally, and trust his design and his kindness and his goodness in the midst of that. Yeah.
I think that could go on a pillow. Just everything you just said there. We'll just cross-stitch that.
We just got some
onto
free
the
therapy,
pillow.
I feel like.
Yeah. Okay, as we wrap up, Kim, would you mind praying for us this morning? I didn't ask you to do that, but I imagine you have the skill set to do that. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, let's pray together. Lord, I thank you so much for this beautiful community of people who show up. Lord, I thank you just on a personal level. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you that we could celebrate the life that we have in Christ by celebrating these wonderful 4 baptisms. Lord, I thank you that you are so committed to our transformation. You are so committed to us in becoming like you. Lord, I thank you that you have formed us beautifully and wonderfully complex. I thank you for the personalities that are present in this room. Lord, I thank you for the histories that are present in this room. I thank you for the emotions that are present in this room, the stories, the relationships, the friendships, the families. Lord, I thank you for how you are, yes, you are transforming each individual person, but you are also transforming this community as a whole. Thank you for how you are moving in the life of this church, the the life of this community. And Lord, I thank you that we can always hold on to the reality that you never give up on us, that our healing, our journey towards wholeness and health, you are so committed to. Lord, I thank you that you're gracious and you're patient with us. When we need a break because it's just hard, you're patient with us. And so, Lord, I pray that you would continue the wonderful, beautiful work that you have been doing in this community. I thank you for their hospitable hearts and their desire to care for their community and to love you deeply. So, Lord, keep your good work happening here. We thank you for who you are, for loving us, so that we can love others and let them know of the wonderful love of Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Church, could we give our panel just a round of applause? Thank you, guys.